Well, I had an initial studio visit with Lauren, who's the curator, and she came to my studio and we looked at some of the work that I was doing there, and then I came to the Highline shortly after meeting her, and the minute I walked up here, I thought that it would be a perfect venue for a project like this. I had done an initial piece in Pittsburgh that was a smaller version of one of these, and that piece sits on a big art center. But coming up here where you have this, access to seeing the roofs and different view of the city, it seemed to me a perfect place to put sculptures that would reference the same type of architecture that you see on rooftops, that function as reference to these iconic billboards, but would kind of deceive you as to what they were, that would actually be sculpture while nonetheless looking like actual furniture or architecture. So it was kind of that conversation with Lauren about how to work with the specific architecture of the neighborhood, how to reference this kind of, I don't know if you'd call it vernacular architecture or street furniture, or just the kind of structures that live on rooftops. But it was in that process that we came to this idea of putting these sculptures on the roofs.
What was your first impression when you saw the Highline?
Oh, I loved it right away. I mean, I think most people do because of the nature of the design of the space being so successful, the integration of the elements like the old railroad tracks, the plantings, which are so sensitively placed and sited. I thought it was a brilliant way to reuse an existing part of the structure of the city. And in a way, it points to a history that my sculptures point to as well, this history that's, just being transformed into something else, I guess.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your work in general?
Sure.
I think you mentioned that you're working in sculpture and drawing. Maybe you can talk a
Yeah.
little bit.
Well, these pieces started with photographs that I took of actual billboards. When I travel, I'm always taking pictures, and I had a trip to Mexico City and took lots of photographs. When I came back to my studio, I took all those photographs and started making drawings from them, so working with charcoal on paper. And those drawings eventually became bigger cutouts, bigger paper cutouts. And I was really interested in them as big paper cutouts. And it was in that process of cutting them out and making them closer to the actual scale that it occurred to me that these would be interesting to re-site them back into their original location. So to take something that was translated as a drawing that retained this perspectival, illusionistic reference and then put it back into real space. My other work in drawing kind of speaks to this same idea of perception and perspective, but does so in a way that allows you more play because you don't have to work with gravity, and it's easier. You can erase something if it's not quite right. So there's a fluidity to working with drawing that's different than working with sculptures.
Was it difficult to realize this project?
Yes, it was difficult. We had to work with everything from the plans that had to be translated with an architect and an engineer to make sure that they met the correct specifications of the city. An engineer did all of the wind load calculations to determine how much of a ballast we would need to make them safe. We then had to work with the city and the Department of Buildings and the Department of Landmarks to have approvals, and we had to work with building owners to make sure that we could find building owners that would, give us the roofs to work with. And then there was the actual construction process and working with fabricators and installers to build and install the pieces. So the whole process probably took about a year and a half.
Future projects? Are there any future projects?
Yeah, I have an exhibition at Mixed Greens in the fall, in October. So I'm working on an installation for their space, and that installation will entail some sculptural work, but mostly drawing. So that's kind of my main focus for the next couple of months, is that project. So that's the main thing.
How long will this project be up?
It'll be up either, well, several of the pieces will be up a minimum of 6 months. It's possible that all 3 of them will stay up through a year. That's the maximum time that we can have. But depending on some of the building owners' plans, we may have to take one down a little bit sooner than that.